to The Catholic Perspective, a podcast brought to you by rcspirituality.org. Enjoy the episode.
Some straight talk about overpopulation and the environment.
When you're stuck in a traffic jam on the LA Expressway, or any other expressway for that matter, it's easy to forget the soothing statistics about the world's entire population fitting comfortably into the state of Texas. On the other hand, it's also easy to question the highly publicized claims that the Earth is headed for catastrophic ecological alterations because of human pollution, when groups like the Oregon Institute of Science and Medicine publish a petition signed by 19,200 scientists who flatly deny those same claims. In fact, faithful and unbiased spectators of eco-political issues often feel like they're at a scientific ping-pong match, watching global crisis claims get rebounded by global normality claims, and vice versa, over and over again. What's really going on? Is the Earth ready to fall off an ecological precipice? Is the human population draining the planet of its capacity to support life? What's a faithful Catholic supposed to make of all the contradictory studies and heated rhetoric? An honest analysis of the facts and a quick look at the most popular extreme views will go a long way to showing the wisdom of the Church's position regarding ecology. First, a glance at the facts. The basic environmental crisis argument goes something like this. There are so many people on Earth that they are overcrowding it, and they cause so much pollution and ecological destruction that they are seriously endangering the very possibility of life as we know it. Therefore, the argument concludes, population needs to be drastically reduced, population growth needs to be stopped, and human industry needs to be curtailed. Instead of getting too bogged down by the ping-pongian exchange of contradictory statistics that surround this argument, we can put it in a perspective simply by taking a look at the logic behind it. The term overpopulation means literally too many people. That is a problematic phrase, to say the least. What constitutes too many people for someone with a natural liking for solitude will differ considerably from what constitutes too many people for someone with a natural preference for city life. Watch out for subjective emotional biases sneaking into conversations about overpopulation. Scientifically, this vague term, too many people, refers to a situation where there are more people than there are resources available to sustain them. In this sense, overpopulation means that a given area has too many people for the available space, air, water, food, energy, shelter, or other basic necessities. Consequently, some of the people will simply not be able to survive, or if they do survive, they will be forced to live in subhuman conditions. So overpopulation really refers to a discrepancy between people and resources in a given area, and to the human misery that results. It doesn't necessarily mean that the amount of people is the fundamental cause of that discrepancy. It could be that the resources aren't being used or distributed fairly, or that the people aren't being given a chance to work productively. Leaving such causal considerations aside, however, predictions that overpopulation is threatening the world as a whole actually translate into claims that the Earth itself does not have enough resources to support a certain number of people. Ever since Thomas Malthus began the first predictions of worldwide overpopulation back in the 18th century, the magic number for exactly how many people is too many has had to be continually redefined. And every couple of years, in fact, organizations like World Watch and the World Wildlife Fund enthusiastically keep up that venerable tradition. Scientifically speaking, in fact, the uncertain claim that the world will not be able to support X number of people directly contradicts three important phenomena that are scientifically certain. First, the world's most densely populated continent, Europe, also happens to have the lowest poverty index. Second, human beings can produce more resources than they consume. This is why squirrels and birds spend all their waking hours gathering food and eating it, but people do things like play baseball and sit around the campfire and decorate pottery and go to movies. In fact, human intelligence has been so effective in discovering how to increase the Earth's productivity that European and North American governments actually pay their farmers not to grow crops so they don't glut the market. In other words, human beings are not just resource consumers. They have the potential to become intelligent resource producers and refiners as well. The most reliable economic studies, in fact, have repeatedly shown that economic growth requires population growth. As the renowned author and lecturer Julian Simon puts it, quote, "Population growth does not have a statistically negative effect on economic growth. We know that from many years of careful quantitative scientific studies. Because human knowledge allows us to produce more finished products out of fewer raw materials, natural resources are becoming more available, not scarcer. Human beings are the greatest resource. You need more, not fewer of them, for economic development." End quote. The third fact that global overpopulation pundits often disregard is that most essential resources are replenishable. It's a temptation to think that when you cut down a tree, or drink a glass of water, or eat a chicken, you have definitively depleted the biosphere of a precious resource. That's not true. You can breed more chickens, you can farm trees, and that water will eventually make its way back into a nice fresh aquifer. Shortages in essential resources have never sprung from global scarcity. Rather, they flow from human ignorance, underdevelopment, selfishness, or mismanagement. People, then, are the Earth's most valuable economic resource, and necessary natural resources are replenishable, and the most densely populated continent is also the healthiest. Apocalyptic warnings that we are on the verge of overcrowding our beloved planet, therefore, are misdirected. The real culprit behind world hunger and poverty is something far less glamorous: human irresponsibility. That is also the culprit behind environmental threats per se. Proofs of an approaching cataclysm from pollution are about as scientifically tenable as claims of impending overpopulation. Many global warming devotees, for example, ignore or falsify the complexities of climate-related research. Richard Lindzen, member of the National Academy of Sciences, former professor at Harvard, MIT, and the University of Chicago, 30-year veteran of meteorological and climate research, and author of more than 200 papers and books on the subject, explains that, quote, "Climate change is a complex issue where simplification tends to lead to confusion," end quote. He shows how certain media and advocacy groups have incorrectly affirmed that scientists agree about the causes and consequences of global warming. When Lindzen testified in front of the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, he even explained how some of these groups unduly pressured United Nations Research Committee members to endorse false environmental documentation. But just because the cataclysm isn't on the immediate horizon, that doesn't mean that pollution isn't an issue. Modern research about how the ecosystem works has undoubtedly clarified its interconnectedness and unearthed real, significant consequences of human carelessness. Pope John Paul II, in his 1990 address for the World Day of Peace, even called the plundering of natural resources one of the major threats to world peace. He told the world, quote, "Faced with the widespread destruction of the environment, people everywhere are coming to understand that we cannot continue to use the goods of the earth as we have in the past. A new ecological awareness is beginning to emerge, which, rather than being downplayed, ought to be encouraged to develop into concrete programs and initiatives." End quote. Not all versions of ecological awareness are equally productive, however. Two of the most counterproductive, and the most common, are pantheism and mechanism. Movements like Deep Ecology and Spirit Earth, and some animal rights and New Age organizations, take the pantheistic route. They envision the world not only as an interconnected ecosystem, but as a single, divine, living organism. This view sees all specifically human activity, building houses, making peanut butter, going to the opera, as a kind of cancer eating away at poor, defenseless Mother Earth. The goal of this neo-pantheism is, in the end, to do away with human consciousness, to have it seep back into the primordial hum of the immanent, universally material spirit. The mechanistic view stands on the opposite extreme. It's a carryover from the Enlightenment, which preached absolute confidence in mankind's ability to control both human society and the natural world with perfect precision and efficiency, like an engineer driving a train. This view writes off any talk of environmental problems as green hogwash and bumbles blindly along, leaving its trail of ecological ruin for future generations to fix. Each of these views hacks off a piece of the truth and treats it like the whole truth. The pantheistic piece of truth is that the world is beautiful, mysterious, and full of hidden meaning. This is true because this is how God made it. The fathers of the Church often referred to creation as the first book of Revelation. Every creature, by its mere existence, has something to say to us about the wisdom, the power, and the beauty of God, which is why Scripture never tires of praising the Creator through admiring the wonders of creation. The mechanistic piece of truth is that human activity is an integral part and in fact the most exalted part of creation. The climax of the whole creation story was when God made Adam and Eve in His own image and put them in charge of the Garden of Eden. He commanded them to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and have dominion over it. So when people gather together in villages and cities, and when people rotate crops and build cathedrals, and enjoy sailing and skiing and make computer chips from grains of sand, they are doing what they were meant to do. They are participating in creation precisely as God meant them to, by cultivating the garden, by elevating nature through human culture. The Christian view of ecology keeps both of these truths together. It gives mankind and human activity its proper precedence over spiders and volcanoes and artichokes. But at the same time, it recognizes that people are only gardeners, stewards of creation, not its absolute masters. And that unveils the real heart of the ecological question, an ethical heart. People are called to moral responsibility, and that includes responsibility in their stewardship of the earth and its resources. The science of ecology has brought to light the planet's biological and environmental unity. We no longer have an excuse for ignoring how our interaction with the environment here and now affects how others will interact with it elsewhere or in the future. 200 years ago, farmers in Holland had no way of knowing about a drought in India. Today, they do, and they also have the ability to help. 1,000 years ago, industrial leaders had no way of poisoning entire ecosystems by mishandling toxic waste. Today's leaders do, and they need to shoulder the responsibility. As a faithful Catholic, then, when it comes to issues of so-called overpopulation and the environment, your job is twofold. First, to have and spread a balanced, logical, and intelligent understanding of the facts, and second, to counteract extremism by engaging in and promoting both appreciation for God's creation and responsible stewardship. Perhaps Pope John Paul II said it best when he summed up the social and individual dimensions of environmentalism as follows, quote, "The ecological crisis reveals the urgent moral need for a new solidarity. States must increasingly share responsibility in complementary ways for the promotion of a natural and social environment that is both peaceful and healthy. And simplicity, moderation, and discipline, as well as the spirit of sacrifice, must become a part of everyday life, lest all suffer the negative consequences of the careless habits of a few." End quote. And that's some straight talk about overpopulation and the environment.
Got questions about the Catholic Church? The Straight Talk series makes key Catholic issues easier to understand. These explanations aren't meant to be exhaustive treatments, but instead offer clear reference points for the Catholic perspective. Straight Talk about the Catholic Church.
You have been listening to The Catholic Perspective, a resource from rcspirituality.org. Please visit our website and check out more great resources to help you pray, learn, grow, and go. Please join our team of digital missionaries by subscribing at rcspirituality.org.